Moving on, we can then talk about what is Sherlock Holmes like, something that, again, I think is usually really difficult for students. So here they can brainstorm a couple of adjectives that they already know. And you can introduce new words like knowledgeable, curious, observant, some of which might be more difficult for your students. And finally, we can talk about what does Sherlock Holmes do? Again, a different variation of a similar structure. Here you can collect verbs like listens, observes, asks questions, investigates crimes, and solves problems. Maybe your students are not familiar with all these verbs, but this is a great moment to introduce them to you, to introduce them to your students. At this stage, you see that we are only working with the presentation, so you can use this activity idea with any other graded reader or any other story that you would like to read with your students. After you have introduced the characters, you can start preparation for reading. Here we are still working with first the cover and the contents page, and you can also introduce the blurb. It's very important that students become familiar and learn about what kind of information they can get out of the book. So make them read the blurb and get information from the cover. Ask them how they feel about it, what they think it might be about. Look for clues, like there is a coronet and there is a gemstone. So what might be the main topic here? And then you can check the contents page. When you have done this, if you move on, in our new readers, you will find double-page character introductions. I don't know if you can see my video, but they look like these. So you can use this to describe the characters and also brainstorm some new vocabulary. So here you can work with jewel, gemstone, jeweler, beryl. You can think about different colors, types of jewels. You can ask students what a carbuncle might be, which might be a very difficult word for them. But if they understand what a gemstone is and it's kind of precious gemstone, then they will feel more comfortable reading the story. I think it's very important to clear out all these difficult verbs and words, because if students get lost with some of the words, they might feel really uncomfortable reading it. So I would dedicate even a lesson to working with these preparations, because it can really make students feel good about reading the story. So moving on, you can share some information about the story. You can check Wikipedia or any other website for information about the story, because some background information can really help understand what the narrative is about. So, for example, The Adventure of the Blue Carbuncle is one of the 56 Sherlock Holmes stories. It was published in 1892 in the Strand magazine. It's very interesting that most of these classics were published in magazines, in series, just like we have watched Netflix and HBO today. In the past, they had magazines to follow in exciting stories. It is set in the center of London, and it is set after Christmas. So it's a nice winter story as well, if you like. Still working with the illustrations, you can show the picture of this bird, a goose. It's a good moment to check the plural, the irregular plural geese. And you can revise the vocabulary of the carbuncle and ask students what it is holding in its beak. So once you have had all this preparation, you have checked all the vocabulary, you can predict what might happen. So Christmas goose, it's a precious gemstone, Sherlock Holmes is involved, so I bet that the gemstone disappears. How does it disappear? How is it lost? And how do your students think Sherlock Holmes will solve the problem? So these are all ideas and things to consider. And I think that we have already dedicated 45 minutes to the story even before starting to read it. So you can really get a lot out of these stories. So, and then you move on to the first chapter. And when you open the first chapter, you will always find, after the before reading activities, you will always find an illustration, and then the story starts. At the bottom of the page, you see a glossary. It's really useful to check new vocabulary here. So explain to your students that this is where we start, and you can start the first chapter in class, even if you encourage independent reading, because this is a great opportunity to model how you read and how you analyze and how you do close reading during reading a new text. And you can model and give scaffolding questions to your students to understand, to make meaning with a new text. So this is how you can do this. First, focus on the illustrations and become familiar with who they are. Seemingly, you only have two guys in a picture, but there's a lot more going on. So who are the two men? You can revise that one of them is Watson and the other is Sherlock. What's in Sherlock's right hand? Now you can revise the new word, a magnifying glass. You can ask what he's wearing. So it's a purple dressing gown. You can think about, now, why is he wearing that? What time of the day is it? Is it the morning? And what's on the chair? There's a black hat. And then you ask them where their gazes are pointing. So this is the focus of attention, the black hat. So there must be something going on with the black hat, and this is what we will have to find out about. So reading comprehension is next. When I have copied the first page here from chapter 1, and working closely with a short piece of text can offer a lot of opportunities. So we are zooming in. We have started with the cover, and then we moved on to the characters. We became familiar with the story, and step by step, we are zooming in onto chapter 1 and onto a smaller piece of text. And this is where ask your students to read the text first at their own pace. Some of them might read slowly. Maybe they want to help each other. And when they have read the text, the first page, give them scaffolding questions to help them get the main information out of the text. So ask very simple questions like, when does the story begin? Who tells the story? Who found the hat and the goose? Where did he find them? When did he find them? And so on. So when you are reading it in class together, and you copy one page for closer reading, you can highlight all the answers. So for example, when does the story begin? 2 days after Christmas, Dr. John Watson. And then we know that who found the hat and the goose, so we have to find a new name. There's a doorman, Peterson. Where did he find them? So we have to look for a place. Tottenham Court Road in the center of London. And at what time? At 4 o'clock on Christmas morning. So you get all the facts. And this way you are preparing for your students to look for facts in text. The next step can be, so moving on from the yellow highlighted factual information, this is a bit like exam preparation as well, because you are scanning the text for information here. So while you are reading a classic and you become familiar with a classic story, you are also doing some serious preparation for exam style reading. Then you move on to new words. So the ones you have already introduced through the illustrations are now on the page. So you can look at dressing gown, magnifying glass, solve a crime, a doorman, owning something, and a goose. So you focus on these little bits. And then, as I had said before, such kind of close reading really models how the very popular Sherlock Holmes style of deductive analytical thinking works, because there is no big secret to it, really. What Sherlock Holmes does is observation and description and the collection of facts. And these are actually very important language skills from A to A1 to C1 level. The students have to perform at exams and also during their day-to-day life. So they can learn how to observe and describe objects carefully from Sherlock Holmes. There's an example from the text. And they can collect facts. This is really also very important for information literacy. So you can just ask your students to focus on fact collection. So moving on with the text, and this could be homework. You can ask your students to really observe objects carefully in the next paragraph and in the next section, and look for descriptions. So here I have highlighted it for you. Sherlock is describing a black hat, and he gets so much information out of it that it's beautiful. What your students could also do then is that they take an object from another student, or they take their own object and describe it with a lot of detail. Actually, Sherlock himself reminds us what we need to do such observations. And he says, "No, Watson, you can see everything," Holmes replied, "but you can't tell me what you see." And actually, all you need to give such observations is language. And you need really good language skills and a lot of vocabulary to be like Sherlock Holmes. So maybe it can be a little motivation as well for your students. So when you have done the reading bit, or when your students have probably read the text at home or in class together alone, then you can ask them what they already remember. So they can use the illustration to describe a hat and point out little details, like there's a label and there's another little label on the goose, and what's really happening here. So you can use observation and description skills, and you can use narrative, the narrative tenses to describe the event itself of what happened. So such an activity works in two ways. It's good for description skills and it's good for narrative skills. So I have collected. This hat is a very ordinary black hat, round and hard, very old and very dirty, and so on. So there will be some new vocabulary probably, like initials or stains that might be new for pre-intermediate level or elementary level students. All right. And you can move on and on in a very similar style. Then you can move on to the man, and you can find a detailed description of the man and collect more facts and more information. And this way, you can have a really nice vocabulary journal or reading journal based on only one chapter and 2 pages and 2 illustrations. And probably you have already covered 2 lessons with all this information. So, as I said, we also offer online practice opportunities, which are very useful. And I mean it also from a very practical perspective, because as a teacher, I don't always have the time to correct everybody's answers. And one very good thing with online practice is that you get the corrections and the feedback immediately. So you don't have to give each and every student feedback based on their vocab or grammar practice exercises. So I think these activities are lifesavers and time savers, and they will also engage your students probably more because they can do them online in an interactive manner. So here, if you go to eZone and you create a course and you use a code from an access code from the book itself, you will be able to access a lot of activities. And you can also, although you have a CD-ROM with the book, you will be able to download the audio in MP3. We get a lot of questions about how people can get the audio files. And here on eZone, you have everything you need for the book. You will have all sorts of other downloads for teachers. But what you can do is you can assign cyber homework to your students where they can go on and either after each chapter or before reading or after reading, you can assign different activities to them. So here is a quick overview. For before reading activities, you can become familiar with the characters, do comprehension activities, both listening and reading. And you have vocabulary activities. So for example, this is what a vocab activity looks like. Here you have to drag the words to the correct pictures. And when the students submit the answers, they will get feedback on their answers immediately. Another activity focuses on the characters, the one that we have discussed before. Here students have to remember the plot and match the correct sentence with the picture. So these tiny activities cover all aspects of reading and language development. And finally, for example, here you have an after reading. The activities get a bit difficult, more and more difficult by the end, because students should know more and more by the time they finish reading the book. So here they have to write the words themselves. So this is a really good spelling activity as well. So you will have dozens of activities for the readers, and you have these activities for each reader. All you have to do is just go on eZone and register to access these. So as I said, giving projects is a really good idea. I personally love project-based learning because it really goes beyond the actual book, and it also makes you understand the story in depth. And you can connect more with the characters and the settings. So for example, I have created this map in Google Maps. If you are interested in mapping things and exploring places, Google Maps really gives you this option to create a map, choose the style. There are lots of colors. And I have added all the names, here on the left side you can see them, of places that Sherlock Holmes and other characters visit during the story. So what students can then do, they can click on all these little landmarks and learn more about the place. And you can use this map to ask students to give a summary of the story itself. So you are improving digital skills, summarizing skills, and you are tapping into language skills all at the same time. It's quite amazing. And another very simple revision is you can use the illustrations to summarize the story. So you can go back to the same characters that you introduced at the beginning of the lesson and at the beginning of reading the reader. And now you can go back and tell us more. So students might remember how little they could say about all these characters, and then by the time they finish reading the story, they will know a lot more, and they can go back and use the illustrations to give a summary. So moving on to Little Women, I don't know how many of you have seen the latest film adaptation of the novel. I personally think it was amazing, but you can decide for yourself. So here again, I have chosen a different character page to introduce the 4 girls. Here again, you can start with the cover, read the blurb, and describe the characters and the setting. So I copied the blurb from the book here. Students will get a general introduction to the main characters and the main theme of love, family, war, that's going on in the story. There are other ways to prepare. So what you can do, you can watch the film trailers. And I don't even mind if the students watch the films before reading, because sometimes watching a film motivates us to read a good book, or maybe we read a good book and then we watch the film, and you can always have really good debates about which one is better. So I don't see a problem with becoming familiar with the plot. So there are two films right now, one from 1994 and one from 2019. I recommend both of them. The first one is a very classical, traditional narrative, which starts at the beginning and ends at the end. And the other one, the modern one, is more like a flashback style. So there you really have to pay attention to understand how the storyline goes. But both of them are beautiful films. Another idea, our series editor, Maria Cleary, had this wonderful idea of creating Wordle images based on each of our books. So she created this Wordle image in which she collected the most frequently used words in each story. And when you show this to the students, they can see who the most important characters are, and then see the most frequently used words, and they can guess why these are important, or we can check the meaning of these words as well. By the way, you can find more of these on the reader's blog. You will find similar Wordle images to use freely for Dr. Dolittle or other popular stories. So, Little Women, and here I'm not going to show you how you can actively engage with the text in close reading, but I have collected some projects that I find important and which will help you explore the story and understand the story more deeply. So first, again, we move on to a map, and we can talk about the geography or the history of New England, and students can learn that the story is set in Concord, Massachusetts. You can explore the most important states in New England, and these are the oldest states in the US. So you can travel all along the coastline and point out each state, and then zoom in to Massachusetts and find Concord on the map. And you can tell your students that Orchard House is the place where Louisa May Alcott wrote the novel. And of course, Google will then let you explore the story and see what it looks like in real life. And then sometimes I give the activity of planning a journey, which might be more difficult today, but we can play with planning a trip or a holiday to America. So your students will have to plan each step of the journey and say, first I travel here and there, and I take this flight, and this is how I get to Orchard House, and this is time I can visit Orchard House. So once you arrive in Concord, you can find information about how many people live there, what is the town famous for, what is this literary circle, if somebody is interested in literature, or maybe students are more interested in famous sites. When they are planning their own trip to the town, they can check out which sites they would visit. And as I said, you can visit the author's house here. Here's a link where you can directly go and take a tour around the house. Moving on from geography or tourism, the story is set during the American Civil War, and it has a serious impact on the March family and of course all the other families as well. So the father is in the army, the girls miss their father, the family has to deal with poverty. So these are very important topics to talk about with any student, really. I think that teenagers are interested in such difficult life stories. So if they study history, or as an English teacher, you can introduce them to American history. You can talk about, or you can assign these questions to different groups or different pairs or individuals to answer. So it might be overwhelming for one student to answer all these questions. So you can divide the tasks. So what were the reasons for the civil war? How did it start? Who was fighting? Who was the president? Which states belong to the Union? Which states belong to the Confederacy? And how did the Civil War end? So these are questions that you can find information about on the internet. Moving on from history, the book offers a lot more topics to cover. One of them is society. So it deals with women at work. The March sisters are encouraged to work by their father. So they all take a job based on their own personal interest. So the students can go and find what jobs the girls do in the story. The author herself had to work to help her family. So this is again a kind of social history to learn about. And students can think about what jobs were available for women in the 19th century. Maybe you can compare what was possible in Russia and what was possible in America, and you can do a comparison. Another interesting aspect is family structures. So there are all sorts of different families within this story. In the March family, there are 4 sisters, and the father is away, so the mother is looking after the girls. The Lawrence family in the neighborhood face different difficulties. Mr. Lawrence is alone with his grandson, whose parents have died. So again, students can become familiar with different lifestyles and different family types. Whereas the Hamel family, who live in deep poverty, there are 7 children and they share one single room. So students can remember different stories they watched or read and compare different family structures. This is a really interesting social experiment to think about this. And finally, there are 2 more projects to go. One is psychology, in a popular way, of course. The 4 sisters are very different, and they were all inspired by the author and her own 3 sisters. So if you have the time, you can compare the author and her sisters and the March sisters, or you can simply read the book, and in the reading journal, students can take notes and characterize each of the girls in different terms, like what are they like, what are they interested in, and what happens to them. They are very different, and they are all very interesting characters. On eZone, you will also find help to do this. So as you can see, there are 4 pages within this exercise, and you can do character descriptions for each girl, and you can revise vocabulary here as well. And finally, I have one more project to do. As I said, I never feel that every student should do all the projects. Rather, they can pick whatever they are interested in, or they can form groups or pairs and do the projects, not in 1 lesson or 2, of course, but as they are reading the story, they can focus on, apart from doing their reading journal, they can focus on 1 project and do the presentation when you have all finished reading the book. So the final project is about communication. There are a lot of letters coming and going in this story, and especially the girls write a lot of letters to their father. So you can ask your students, when was the last time they sent a letter? How much does it cost to mail a letter? Do we even know? How long does it take for a letter to arrive within your country? And how long did it take in the 1960s for a letter to arrive? So we really have to be patient. You can remind them. What are the advantages and disadvantages for letters? So after such a discussion, if somebody chooses this, then you can do vocabulary activation through speaking practice. And you can organize a small debate. It's called Letter Writing is Better Than Text Messages. So you can have 2 groups and assign each group the task of arguing for letter writing or for text messages. And to prove their point, students can collect examples of letter writing from the reader. So here, for example, in this picture, you can see one letter, and there are a lot more examples. There are telegrams, and there are all sorts of different types of communication. So this can be a nice experiment as well to compare different types of communication in the story and, of course, today. So these were my ideas. I hope you can use any or some of them in your own classes. If you are interested in more, you can explore more and learn more about these ideas or similar ideas. As I said, on the Helping Readers book, you will find similar project lessons for different readers. And there are the self-correcting language practice and full MP3 audio activities on Helbling Languages, which can really save you a lot of time. And still more, if you're interested in more of our ideas, you can follow us on different platforms. So here for Facebook, I would recommend Helbling English simply and not the Italian extension, but here's the Helbling Readers blog, Helbling English on Instagram, and you can watch some posts from our video materials on YouTube as well. If you have any questions, you can email us at support@helbling.com. And I really hope that you will follow us and read our blog as well. Thank you for your attention. It was really nice talking to all of you.
Thank you very much, Nora. So I'm really thrilled with all the information and all the opportunities you can offer to the teachers. That's really, really great.
Thank you.
Yeah. What I do recommend is to go to your website, I mean Helbling Languages website, and to search for more information, okay? So also yes. You mentioned eZone, which is very, very helpful and resourceful to teachers, right? And I'm sure they can find even more that you just showed them, right? Okay.
I'm very sure. Thank you very much.
And please remind us, so you said that, so these Helbling readers so go in series, right? And you were these Helbling readers go in series, right? And you were talking about red series.
Yes, these are the red series. The blue series are more for teenagers and even for adults. There you will find more serious topics, of course, fun topics as well, but we have readers even for adults about crime, politics, environment, love stories, modern or serious family questions and topics. So you will find a wide range from Dr. Dolittle up to political crime. So all sorts of very interesting stories. What I also recommend, just one more idea, is that some of the readers grow with the students. So, for example, we have the Westbourne Kids, or we have the Time Traveler series, where you have different levels. So if the students get familiar with a group of characters, they can follow their stories as they learn more and more in English. So that's also an interesting idea to check out.
I'm sorry. And what about young learners? Do you have anything for young learners?
They are my favorites. I personally read them in my free time, because they're the illustrations. You see that these illustrations are amazing, but those illustrations as well cover all sorts of styles and atmospheres. The Thinking Train series now has 24 different levels from A1 to A2, and from really primary, very basic stories, where we have beautiful picture books. And there's the Helbling Young Readers, which are a bit similar, a bit bigger, and they all have projects. They all have games online, jazz chants. So they are more of course, for children, but there the illustrations will just break your heart. The stories as well.
Yeah, this is amazing. Lars, maybe it is worth mentioning your Helbling application, app for the smartphones, because it is also very, very nice and it gives a lot of opportunities, right? Just a second.
Yes. Okay.
Right, so.
Yes, you're right. The Helbling Media app is an app where you can access all the audio files for our course books, not for the readers for the time being, but in the future you will be able to access the audio files for all our readers as well. Right now you have the audio for the readers on a CD that goes together with the book, or on eZone, where you can download MP3 files of all the readers.
Yeah, thank you. So is it free to download?
Yes, it's free. The Helbling eZone is completely for free for everybody. You register for free, and all the resources you have access to are for free. The only thing you need is a book that you have to buy, and in the book you will find a scratch code, and via that scratch code that you activate on your in your eZone account, you will have access to all these resources.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much.
And not only on the eZone, also on the Helbling Media app, when in the case of the course books, but when we have the audio files for the readers, they will be available for free as well on the Helbling Media app. You just need the code.
All right, okay, thank you very much again. So it was really, really great to know that our children, and not only children, but teenagers and even adults, have a very nice opportunity. So to continue learning reading, or maybe start learning reading, all right? And
yeah.
so with the help of Helbling readers, graded readers, and a lot of digital opportunities, a lot of interesting and inspiring opportunities. Hopefully we will have even more thankful readers, okay, all over the world, and especially in Russia.
Thank
you, Nora. Thank you, Lars.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was very, very inspiring. Hope to see you soon to know more about the series from Helbling Languages.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
For now, maybe teachers would like to ask any questions, because we do have some time before. So another speaker is joining us.
Just go ahead.
Welcome. So you may even turn on your videos if you would like, so to ask Nora. And remember, I told you about the reactions at the very bottom of your screen. You may give Nora a round of applause, and to Lars, of course, or you may just show a thumb. All right, thank you, Alena. You know how to do that. Okay, so and Doina, so some people do know how to do that. So, okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a nice day.
You too.
Bye for now.
Bye.